Good morning. Well, I am here to change the world, to design a better world. And what does it take to design a world? It takes changing everything. I want to change education. I want to change economics. I want to change sustainability. I want to change design. So I'll start by talking about education. So I am well trained in science and engineering. I have two degrees in electrical engineering. I have a PhD in psychology. So I understand people and maybe technology. But I am opposed to STEM education. STEM means teaching science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I am very well trained in all four. So why am I opposed to it? Because if you want to do anything for people, for the world, for society, you have to understand history, philosophy, ethics, humanity, the arts, technology, science, everything. And the trouble with today's modern education, especially from the very best schools, is we have the very best people in every field. And how do the very best people get hired? Oh, because they are the very best. And how do we know? Because they publish in the very best technical journals. And who reads the technical journals? Other people in that very same narrow area. So if you teach STEM, you are teaching people to be very good, excellent specialists. But specialists cannot create anything. In order to create everything, you need to bring together all the specialties. Yet in school, we are taught to work all by ourselves. In the real world, we must work with other people. And we must work with people who think differently, not who think the same. So that's why I'm against STEM. So what I saw in this morning was wonderful. So for example, take this school, the School of Architecture, Art, and Design. They are doing a really good job of putting those three together so they learn to work together. But that's not enough. Because what we must do is learn to work in problem solving, not in specialties, but in solving real problems, because when you solve a real problem, then you have to realize you have to bring in the expert in public health, and the expert in civil engineering, and the expert in materials, and the expert in sensors, and the computer scientist people. And by the way, when I say computer science, there are maybe 10 or 15 specialties in computer science. When I say engineering, how many engineering departments are there? So, for example, if you want to know about people, where do you go? If you go to the social sciences, well, there are many of them. So do you go to the psychology department, or the sociology department, or the anthropology department? I will tell you no. These people do not understand people. I know, because I have a PhD in psychology. What was I an expert in? How the ear works. That's important to know, but it's not about people. If you want to understand people, do you know where you go? Go to literature. Go to the people who write novels. Because they have to talk about people that are really real. So when you read a book, you say, oh, I know that person. I really hate that person. Or I really like that kind of a person. The people who write novels, they have to walk around the world watching, observing, learning how real people behave. So I think I would like to change education. So instead of learning to be a graphic designer or an interaction designer or an industrial designer, I want to understand how the world works. We have to understand culture and ethics and history, everything. So that's one change. What about economics? The economists use mathematics, and it's very impressive, except they're always wrong. The economists, the joke goes, They have predicted the last 15 of the 5 economic depressions. They predicted 15 of them, and not including the 5. Because they don't understand people. And so their mathematics is very logical and very sensible, and that's not people. We don't work by logic. Logic was invented by mathematicians and philosophers. It's not how people behave. So we have to understand real people. And in economics, we do these funny measures. We measure the global GPD, productivity measure. And what does that mean? One number that summarizes a country. And the number is bizarre because it means how much money the country spends. So if I make something in my manufacturing plants and I pollute the water, well, that's good, I spent a lot of money. And now the government has to spend more money to clean up the pollution. Well, that's good, we spent more money. So the pollution counts twice. No. Besides, to have one number doesn't work. You need to have many more numbers to understand the world. Sustainability, it's too late. Sustainability is too late. We've already reached the point that it's unsustainable. And sustainability means to stay where you are. Let's sustain the current state. The current state is horrible. We have to recover and regenerate, and we have to learn to adapt. So, many of you know this book. Those of you who are designers, the design of everyday things. And what it teaches is something that is called human-centered design. And I have been teaching this book for 20 years, and it's very successful, very popular, in Thailand too. I just signed many copies. It's wrong. So I'm here to tell you that book is wrong. But what's wrong about it? There is nothing wrong in the book. Everything in the book I still teach and I still believe in. What is wrong is what is not in the book. So, I'm very old, and I've retired 5 times. And after I retired the 5th time, I said, what will I do now? And I decided that all these other books that I've written 21 books. Well, I had written 20 books when I did this, and I said, this book is very important. It tells how to make things that are understandable and usable and fit people. But you know, that's nice, but the world is a mess. And I looked out my window and I said, everything I see is artificial. In this room, everything is artificial. People, well, all right, people are real, but not what we believe. And everything else, I can look out the window and I can see the Pacific Ocean, it's real. And I can see the mountains of Mexico. Well, the mountains are real, but Mexico is artificial, the notion of a country. And I can see what is called Mission Bay, a very great recreational area. It's artificial because it used to be a swamp and they transformed it. And I live on a steep hill, but my house is there with a flat land. And so that's artificial. And all the plants are artificial. And we have many palm trees, and they were planted, so that's artificial. And we have many animals that live there, but they live there because we created this artificial world for them. So almost everything is artificial. Countries, laws, regulations, clothes, and almost everything is technology. Clothes are technology, writing is technology. Anything invented by people for use is technology. But if, therefore, we design the world the way it is, that means that the world is in trouble. Maybe design can change it. So I said, let me write about that. And I said, I will write about all the problems of the world. And I looked at them and I said, no, I don't need to. The problems are well understood. Many people have written very good works about it. We understand the problems very well. Well, maybe I'll write about the solutions. But I looked around and read and talked to people, and for every problem we know the solutions. So what's the problem? Well, we haven't done them. So let me look at the United Nations. We have at least 2 people here from the United Nations. The United Nations has a meeting. They call it COP, Committee of the Parties. Isn't that a wonderful name? Now you know what it does, Committee of the Parties. That's actually the Climate Change Committee. It has met for the 28th time this year. So COP28, just finished. So we've been talking about climate change and the problems and what we must do to solve them for 28 years. And what have we done? Very little. Almost nothing. So what's the problem? The problem is human behavior. So I said, oh, I understand technology. I have 2 degrees in electrical engineering. I was a vice president at Apple. I understand people in theory. I have a PhD in psychology. And I started the field of cognitive science. So I have a rule also when I teach, which is never say what's wrong with the world unless you have a better idea. And therefore I said, let me put together the things that I am good at and the ideas that already exist. And so I wrote this book. This happens to be in Thai. It just came out today. Today, it finally is available in Thai, so I can't read it. Except I made them change the title on the book. It says it's written by Don Norman. But if I opened it up, it said it's written by Donald Norman, Dr. Donald Norman, PhD. And I said, no. First of all, that's 2 titles that mean the same thing. And second of all, I don't like titles. Titles tell me what education you've had. I care about what you've accomplished. So I like to be called Don Norman. But I recommend the book. I like it. The point is, what are the issues? The name of the book is Design for a Better World that's meaningful, that's sustainable, and that's humanity-centered. So what do I mean by those terms? I've already mentioned meaningful. The economics, or the economists, for example, talk in ways that we don't understand, but it's all mathematical, so it must be right. Except the assumptions they make are completely wrong, and nobody looks at the assumptions. Fortunately, some of my friends, actually, have started to change economics. So one of my first friends was a man named Herbert Simon, who was at the university, Carnegie Mellon University. He was in all sorts of fields. He was in business, he was in psychology, he was in computer science, he helped invent the field of artificial intelligence. And he got the Nobel Prize in economics for saying, you know, you economists, you think that people behave logically, that you have all the information that's necessary to make the best decision, and that's nonsense. Nobody can have all the information, and the human mind doesn't know what to do with it anyway. So what we do is we satisfice. We try to find something that's good enough. Well, when he got the Nobel Prize in economics, my economist friends said it was a waste of the Nobel Prize because he was not an economist. And later on, 2 of my other friends, their names are Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And they got the Nobel Prize for just looking at real human behavior. And the reason I know them, I knew them when they were both graduate students. When they were starting out, they were psychologists. Now, actually, the Nobel Prize did not go to 2 of them because Amos made a mistake. He died. And if you die, you don't get the Nobel Prize. So it was only Kahneman, Danny Kahneman, got the prize. But his work and Simon's work and now a few other people's work, the Nobel Committee did a good job of trying to tell the economists they have to think more about how people really behave. And so that is starting to change the field of economics. Behavioral economics is called. It's about time we changed But we have to change other fields as well to be realistic about the real problems in the world. We cannot just stay in the university and study what we think is real. Most university professors have never worked in a company. Most business professors have never worked in a business. I was like that. I thought I understood how things were done. I was a professor for many, many, many years. I consulted for many companies. But I finally decided I would like to see what it was like to bring out real products. So I took my first retirement. To show you how old I am, I retired in 1993. And I went to Apple and became a vice president, and I learned what it was like to bring out real products. And I learned that all the wonderful things I knew, and I had already written this book. And most of what was in the book, most of what was in the first edition didn't matter. And the real questions that people had, oh, I never thought of that. So I've learned that going back and forth between industry and academics is very powerful, because in industry, I learn what the important questions are, and in academics, I have the time to study it and come up with answers. But otherwise, we study what we think is important, which may not be important in the real world. So it's really good to go back and forth, because let me look at climate change, for example. The first papers in climate change were written many, many, many years ago. Look, we had 28 years of meetings on it, so we knew about the climate change issue even longer than that. But they were written and published in geological journals. Who reads them? Other geologists. And then they wondered why the world wasn't paying attention. Academics publish very important papers in their own specialty journals, which means they are talking to themselves. Do you want to know what the most famous business journal is? It's the Harvard Business Review. Do you know what the academics in business think of it? They think it's nonsense. It's not a good place. It's not very scholarly. It doesn't have many references. But it's the most important journal because it's read by business people. So if you want to be famous, you have to write and talk where the business people are. If you want to be promoted, you have to write in the technical journals. And you can do both, but they require different languages. I don't mean language like English or Thai. I mean different way of talking, like I'm talking now. This is not a good talk for academics. It may be a good talk for you. So we have to start changing how we talk about things. If the temperature goes up more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, oh, it'll be horrible. 1.5 degrees Celsius? It changes more than that every day. What are you talking about? Because this is the way the climate people talk. But no. They're not talking about temperature, they're talking about heat. And heat is very different than temperature. They're talking about the global impact. They measure the temperature of the world. How do you do that? Well, it turns out you have all these measuring stations, they're all measuring different things, and they all get different numbers, and there's a very complex way of putting it all together, but they're measuring heat. And so another degree temperature in heat across the entire world is a tremendous amount of heat that makes a huge difference. But how does the everyday citizen understand that? And there are other things. I've already talked about gross domestic product. That's a meaningless number for most people, but it's very important in economics. And all the famous economists of the world tell you it's a very bad number, but we still use it. And there are other things that we measure. We measure things that can't be measured. And so what we do is, we measure something else that has some relationship, and we name it by what we care about. And then we forget that what we're measuring is not what we care about, because it has the same name. And there was a famous physicist who once said, if you can't measure something, it means you don't understand it. Well, that's not what he said. He said, in the physical sciences, if you can't measure it, then you don't understand the science. Because in the physical science, if I drop this book, I can predict how fast it's going to fall, and if I do it again, it will be the same answer, and I do it again. It is not dependent upon history. It's path independent. The history doesn't matter. It will always fall at the same rate. Now, if I drop a cat or a person, or if I do anything to a person or any living big thing, the history does matter. Its whole past history determines its behavior. And therefore, when we measure things in the social sciences, it doesn't matter how accurately we measure, because the next time it will be different. The very fact of measuring it changes it. The very fact that people know that you're measuring it changes it, even before you've measured. There are ways of measuring subjective things, but you have to be very careful about doing it. So, for example, the Nobel Prize in Economics to Danny Kahneman, they never measured things. What they did is they told stories. And what they did is they gave people examples and problems to solve. Simple problems they gave to economists, they gave to mathematicians, they gave to everyday people, and they almost always got it wrong. And as they started demonstrating where people got it wrong and where people got it right, they began to develop a very powerful theory of human behavior. You don't always need complex measurement. So that's meaningfulness. We must get more things that are meaningful to real people if you want people to take action. Now, what about sustainability? As I already said, yes, we must change to be sustainability. And I noticed this morning's talks were really good in terms of what is going on here at KMIT on taking technological solutions to these problems. Moreover, it's really important that you work with the people in doing the technological systems. So, yes, but sustainability, it's too late because we have wasted 28 years or more. And so the temperature has already reached the 1.5 degree change. And it's going to go up to 2 because we're not going to be able to slow it down, or we can slow it down, but we're not going to be able to stop it. So we have to think very hard about what we're doing. So I just went outside and looked at the architectural models, and one of the things you're doing here is you're building a lot of models on stilts when the water changes. But by the way, speaking of architectural models, there's a problem with them. You see, you go in and you look at those models and you're standing there and you see the models and you're supposed to judge it. But you know what? Nobody ever sees the building like this. It's as if I'm a bird flying and I see it, or maybe a drone or something. So what I have to do is get down on my knees and say, here's the ground, and how tall is the person? That tall? So my eye must be here. And then I could look at the building and try to understand it. If you want to understand something, you have to be a participant. You have to be there. And these models give the wrong impression because they don't allow you to see it the way that real people will experience the models. And so actually here's a technology that will be very valuable, virtual reality, where we're already starting to use that in architecture so you can even walk through and experience the building. What we have to do is change the world so that we don't try to emphasize more profit, productivity, all these measures about time and schedule and budget and so on. Those are important. But there's something that's even more important, and it was already mentioned today: quality of life. We should be emphasizing quality of life. And does money matter? Yes, money is very important. Does the productivity measure? Well, a little bit, because that has to do with money. Does keeping the schedule matter? Well, yeah, a little bit, because that has to do with money. But in the end, it's quality of life. So let me come to my last point in the book, which is humanity-centered. So I talked about human-centered design in this book. And I told you that human-centered design is wrong. Human-centered design we call HCD, human-centered design. So humanity-centered design is simply human-centered design, but with the things that are left out put back in. So I call it HCD+. So the principles of human-centered design, and since I always remember them in the wrong order, even though I invented them, I remember them wrong, are, first of all, when you're asked to solve a problem, don't. My rule is that when I'm asked to solve a problem, I say, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to find out what the real problem is. What is the core, underlying cause of the problem you face? Because almost always when people ask me to solve a problem, they talk about the surface. They talk about the symptoms that they see. But to solve the problem, you have to solve the underlying causes. And those are hard to solve. But if you solve the underlying cause, the real problem, the problem you see, goes away. So solve the underlying problem. That principle is the same in human-centered design and humanity-centered design. The second one is you have to think about a system. Now, in human-centered design, like here's my phone, so I have to think about the design of the phone and how people will use it. One thing people don't realize is I love to have this very narrow bezel and somehow it looks prettier, but it means I can't answer the phone because every time I pick it up, my finger hits the screen and it goes off someplace else. I can't figure out where the phone went to. And it's a system. You have to think about the whole system. You have to think about the cell system and the signal that's coming in and where it's coming from and all of that. But that's not enough. Today, what we have to do is think about the ecological damage we do in mining to get the wonderful materials to make these new phones. And we have to think about the damage we do in manufacturing and in smelting. And the damage we do because in business schools we teach you how to make things that don't work for very long because you want to sell more products. So the phone has to be replaced every 2 or 3 years. And we want it to be very thin and light and beautiful, so we have to glue it together and make it difficult to open up and repair. That's wonderful for business profits and it's horrible for the planet. So we have junk, electronic junk, polluting the world. Plastics, textile, clothing. Much clothing is discarded and thrown away without ever having been worn. And it's difficult to reuse clothing because it has poisonous dyes, and it's difficult to take apart, and it's difficult to reuse everything because we combine things together so they can't be separated. A paper cup, you think, well, paper is I can reuse. But if the paper cup is used for coffee or milk, well, it isn't paper. There's a very thin layer of plastic inside to protect it. And that plastic can't be removed easily. And so we have to change the way we're making things. We have to change the way that we are living. That's going to be hard. It requires what's called the circular economy, which is a bit like nature. You know, when I eat a banana, I can take the peel and throw it into the jungle. I don't want to throw it in the city street. In the jungle, and it will deteriorate and become fertilizer for new bananas. And all fruits, in fact, are designed that way. Fruits are designed to be attractive to animals who eat the fruits and then travel a lot and then expel the seed, and that's how the plant moves. But we don't do that with our products. We make them for one-time use only. And it's very convenient for us. Plastics are wonderful. They're very convenient for our lives, but they are destroying the world. So we have to change that. So that's the system we must look at, is a system of all living things. Not just people, not just our culture, but all cultures, but also animals, insects, all the things under the ground, because they sustain human life. And we have to look at the ecology and the whole way that nature is created, because that's important for human life. You know, the world is not in danger. The world will stay on. People are in danger. So humanity-centered design says look at this big system. And that's difficult, by the way. Really difficult. but you should need at least to think about the impact. So the next principle is we have to take a long-term systems point of view. Because too much of economics today, in today's stock markets of the world, are people care about immediate profits, sometimes in microseconds or seconds. And when you're in a business, when you think about the future, you think about not 10 years from now, you think about 8 months from now, because the world of economics is divided into quarters. 4 months, 4 months, 4 months, 4 months. Because companies report their profits every 4 months. And so for this quarter, I worry about next quarter. And for the next quarter, I worry about the quarter after that. That's not long-term thinking. We have to think about what happens in the next 10 years. But that means changing the reward structure in business. But I think we should also change the reward structure of academics, because today you are rewarded for the papers you produce. We should be rewarded for the long-term impact. I tell people that if I do something that saves 1,000 lives, my academic friends say, that's nice. If I do something that gets a paper published in either Nature magazine or Science magazine, I get promoted. Now, I'm not saying those papers are not important, they are important. But so is the people who do something in the world. That's important. But it's difficult in academia because it's difficult to measure their impact. You can't look at citation index to find out. But we have to change that. We can change that. Now, what is design? Design is a field that doesn't know anything about topics. That's the strong, important thing about design. We don't know. That's good. What we have is a set of methods that can be applied to anything. One of the slides said design is a set of methods that can be applied to, it listed things, and I thought that was a good start, but they tried to list what design could be used for, and I said no. Design can be used for anything. When you chose your seat here, you were designing it. You were trying to sit, do I want to sit near the front? Or maybe it'll be dull, so I want to sit in the back so I can leave and nobody will notice. Or maybe I want to, etc. So designing is any time you are changing behavior or changing the world to improve something. And so you can use design for anything. But we have to, therefore, teach that to people. And design ought to be taught as a basic skill to all fields. Not because people will be good designers, but because they will understand where it's important. For example, I'm a designer, but I can't draw. I can't make beautiful objects. Now, that's okay. It's important to make beautiful objects. I have a book about that. But I can't do it. What's important is I know I can't do it. But I can make things that are easier to understand and easier to use. So when I'm helping design and build something, I have to make sure that all the things I'm bad at, I bring in other people who are good at it. We work together. I don't finish it and then tell them to make it beautiful. We start from the very beginning, thinking about how we can design it so it works well and it's attractive and it's easy to manufacture and it's easy to repair and easy to maintain. All of those have to be thought out at the same time, and each of those requires different people, so we have to work as a team. And if we make it easy to repair so things last longer, companies say, oh, but I make my money by selling products. And I say, yes, and I don't want you to go out of business, that's important. So what I will have to do is I will have to teach you to sell services, not products, so that you guarantee this thing will work all the time. But they're getting money and paid for that, and it makes people happy because they get good service. So we have to change that. So I said I would talk for a short time, but I have questions. Well, I'm almost out of time. I know this. I get carried away. So let me tell you what I am doing to try to change the world. A bunch of my friends said they wanted to start an award in my name. And we could therefore find a famous designer who had done really great, wonderful stuff. And I said no. I didn't want to use my name to start with, but second of all, if you're well known, you get an award, it's nice, but it doesn't change what you are doing. When do you need the award the most? It's when you're just starting out. And so I said, let me give an award to people who are just starting. And I don't want to give it to designers, because designers do the design. The design doesn't matter. It does matter a lot, actually. But the point is, if you don't actually build it and create it and use it in the world, it doesn't matter. Lots of people try to do designs, and they win prizes for them, but do they ever build them and try them out? No. So I said, I will give a prize to early career people who are just starting out, who do something of great importance, and I said, it has to be of the 16 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Some of you know that there really are 17. But 17 is not about societal goals. Goal number 17 is, these problems are so difficult, we must all band together to try to solve them all. In some sense, I'm working on number 17. And so I issued a call. I said I will give a prize to people who are early career, doing something of great importance in the world. And I will also say, I want to honor the educational institutions that are teaching people to do this. So there were two types of awards. The educational institution was not a contest, because I'm happy to give it to every educational institution in the world if they have evidence that they are doing this. And the best evidence is not the curriculum. The best evidence is the graduates. Are your graduates in the world helping change the world? And what was nice is, well, I can read it to you, that we had entries from 26 different countries. And my board is 5 people, 3 of them are actually from India. And I have 18 advisors. One of them is in the room right now from Singapore. And so the 18 advisors and the 5 people, they come from 11 different countries. And they come from the United States, from China, France, Italy, Mexico, Kenya, Singapore, Switzerland, Canada, the US, and Botswana. And the awards, we gave out 5 awards for projects. And we had 2 levels. Ones that were really excellent, and they went to India, Brazil, and Mexico. And we went to 2 that were really good, but they weren't quite there. So we said, you're promising, keep at it, you're doing wonderful work, but you need to go a little bit higher. And they went to Ghana and Hong Kong. And in education, we gave awards to, or recognition to the United States, Argentina, England, India, Singapore. And I like the fact that this is a worldwide contest. And it's not an American contest, it's a world contest because the problems are in the world. So that's my talk. I'll leave you. No time for questions. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
But I also want to thank the conference. It's nice that it's named after my book, but when I watched just the beginning talks, it's a wonderful tribute because exactly what you are talking about is exactly what is needed. Except what is needed plus. So I've given you an idea of what else you might need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. We're so happy that you're here with us today, definitely. And as you can see here, there's